When I was 7 years old, I asked my father if I could borrow $20 so that I could buy my brother a birthday present. I can't really remember what the present was right now, but I do remember asking for it, and the look that he gave me, just kind of not disappointed, but questioning. Like, what do you want money given to you for? And I never really thought too much more about it after that, but he explained to me that the way that we earn money is by working for it. So for him to just give me money, it wasn't going to be a good example. It wouldn't be a good way for me to start my life. So what he ended up suggesting was that I come down to the store that he owned to earn some money. So that started my working career. I basically went down that weekend, earned some money. Don't remember exactly how much I earned, and honestly, I don't even remember what I got my brother for his birthday. But all I do know is that I learned a lot of really good lessons that first time going to work with my dad, and they've pretty much translated into the rest of my life. I don't have formal training on a lot of things, but I know how to do a lot of things. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, until you're really exposed to something, you don't know if you'll like it, and also if it's going to be something that you're actually even interested in. So what I can tell you is that first day that I went to work with my dad, we got there very early, I think 6 a.m. And for a 7-year-old, that's very early. And I remember walking through the back door with him and kind of like, getting used to the smell. I've been there my whole life, but I've never been there to earn money, to work, to do anything like that. But I remember going in, and he was like, well, I have a few things to do in my office, so I'm gonna need you to fix and work on something right outside my office. And I was like, okay, well, what would you like me to do? He kind of looks around, and he grabs this lamp, and this lamp is, at the time, 1.5 feet taller than me. So I'm like, okay, well, what do you need done with this? And he's like, well, I need this to be fixed, but I also need it to be, brushed down and put a little of this antique agent. So I'm like, fixed? I don't know how to fix a lamp. I mean, I don't know the first thing about this. So my dad showed me. He took the lampshade off and kind of unscrewed the light bulb socket, and he kind of pulled it up out of the post that the lamp was in. And he pointed to the one screw, and then he pointed to the other screw on the other side. And he said he unscrewed the light bulb. And when he did, he said, you see the little dot on the bottom? And I was like, yeah. And then he said, and you see the metal on the sides, the contacts on the sides? I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, so that's one contact, and this is the other. He's like, so we got to figure out if there's power coming through this switch, or to this switch, and then we got to go from there. So basically, I was confused. I didn't know what to do, and I really wasn't sure what he was asking. So He said, I already know what's wrong with this. The light socket thing, the thing that you screw the light bulb down into, was bad. It had corrosion and it was very old. And it was just an old piece of technology, so it needed to be replaced. But while I was at it, he's like, you might as well change out the cable to a new cable, not this old rope style cable, and also put a new plug on it. And I was like, okay, I'm just not sure. He's like, okay, well let me go, get the things taken care of that I need to get taken care of. And in the meantime, take the 2 screws out and just work on fishing that wire back down through the pipe. And I was like, okay. So, not knowing anything, I take this screwdriver and probably tried to turn the screws the wrong way a few times before realizing the correct way. And then I proceeded to take the lamp wire apart, pull it out of the tube, and proceed to get all of the top pieces out as well. So after about an hour of messing around with that, he does come back out and he says, how you making out? I don't know. I got the pieces off, but I have no idea how to fix it, how to make new ones. So he gives me a little coil of wire. It has two separate wires. And he gives me a plug. And he gives me the new socket. And he explains to me, okay, so there's 2 wires on the inside of this socket. And there's 2 wires on this plug. So you just need to make sure that whatever wire you run to this side needs to be to whatever certain plug on the other side. And I was like, okay, easy enough. So I just kind of put like a little mark with a pen or a pencil on it. And I put that on either end so that I knew which side to put on the positive and which side I had to put on the negative. He kind of explained that to me as well. So after getting the little bit of wire stripped back and getting the pieces all installed and placed properly, I remember the first time that I clicked the light switch and the light turned on, and I was just blown away because for the first time, it was like, whoa, I worked on this thing. And it's all I did that day. But it was the moment of, if you work on something and replace bad parts with good parts, you can fix things. You don't always have to just replace things. You can fix them, save a lot of money, and learn something. And you know what? The whole process was really fun. Especially turning it on, and then it worked. And then the only thing that I was wondering was, man, do we have a lampshade that I can put on this and kind of finish this off? And of course he did. They sold lampshades, so there was plenty of them. more than anything, what it did is it opened up my eyes to, hey, you can really affect change if you just put your mind to it. So needless to say, I did not just go to work with my dad that day. I continued going to work for him, and I worked for him for a very long time. I don't remember exactly when I started kind of being what you could consider part-time, but it was only a couple of years later, maybe 9 years old. But by that time, I have now been exposed to so many things. I was doing the grounds. I was weed whacking. I was riding the riding lawnmower to mow about a 3.5 acre property once a week, every week. I was doing hardware. I would buff hardware, so I would grind it I'd hit it with like a wire wheel on a bench grinder. And mind you, I'm 9-10 years old, but my big brother, the oldest brother in my family, was the head of the shop, the workshop. So I was always really under super tight supervision from him. A couple incidents, but nothing serious. But yeah, I would grind. So basically, if let's say a old antique dresser came in, my job was breakdown. So I would take the handles and any hinges and any decorative hardware out. If it had glass in it, that'd be separated. But for the most part, for metal, depending brass, steel, whatever, I would have to hit it with a wire wheel, and then depending on what my brother was trying to do with it, or my dad was trying to do with it, I would either buff it on a buffing wheel, or I would antique it with an antiquing agent, and that would just make it look old. It was like a brown, and we'd just dip it in that, and it would make it look old again. So that when it was refinished, you could put these on, and they wouldn't stand out as really shiny silver or shiny brass. It would look old, so the new stain and all that would look great, but the bright shiny handles wouldn't be taken away from the actual beauty of the piece. I was pulling boards through planers. I mean, I was cleaning everything, bathrooms, stairs. I was emptying dust bags. I was nailing holes into the floor. I would help with glue ups. I was doing all kinds of things. I learned how to sandblast, and it was also my first real exposure to spray painting in a spray booth. I started doing that about 10, 11 years old, respirators, but not even, I mean, I started with spray cans, but by 11, 12 years old, I mean, I was using HVLP guns, and I was spraying nothing critical, no stain, no finish, but definitely paint. And I learned, and I learned, and I learned. And what I learned from a very young age was, with enough time, dedication, and effort, I could seriously make a difference in a lot of different scenarios. So I did, and I continued to learn. And I learned music, piano, alto sax, saxophone, some drums, lots and lots. I just really started to understand that you could teach yourself how to be more effective to not just your life, but the people around you. I also got into sports and realized very quickly that with hard work and more effort than was required as a minimum, that I could affect change in a team scenario, and did that very well in a couple different sports. But for the most part, why am I building this thing? So I love this wood. This wood is Cocobolo. I mean, look at it. It's orange and purple and beautiful and just all around awesome. So I did put out a short a little while ago about making this round piece, but it wasn't really directly involved in this video or explained as to what it was or what it was going to be. So this is all it is. It's just a small little standoff for the first lamp that I've ever built. And this is in homage or in tribute to the first piece that I ever worked on, the first project that I ever fixed, the first thing I ever made. I don't know. But I've never made a lamp. I've made so many things since then. You know, and I think that just that beginning is what helped get me into a very creative headspace. You know, since I was little, I've been making things, breaking things, taking things apart, fixing them. And it's always, I mean, still now, I mean, this is what I do. I make things out of wood. But for a long time, I was making things out of anything I had. But I also was working on cars. So what I got into for a while, for years and years, once I was driving, was making custom fiberglass boxes for different speakers and subwoofers for cars. I didn't make tons, but I made a few, and I really, really enjoyed it. And again, that was taking, a ring for a speaker and mounting it up with sticks, and then taking a cloth material like cheesecloth and stapling it over it, and then drenching that with fiberglass resin so that it would harden up, and then actually covering it with fiberglass mats and sheets, and then putting fiberglass fill, what some know as Bondo, to fill in all of the small little voids created when you do that kind of work. So yeah, and that translated into basically when I was around that time, there was this big movie franchise called Fast and Furious that came out, and the small subwoofer boxes then translated into making wide body kits for my cars, and putting just different fiberglass body kits on cars, but completely modified. I mean, I made 2 completely custom body kits, and I installed, probably 3 or 4, but all fiberglass and all mainly custom fit. But now I don't do anything with cars. I don't do any work on cars. I don't do any work on stereos for cars. I strictly do woodwork, and I honestly believe if I didn't ever get that start of just building a lamp, or not building, but fixing a lamp, that I can't say that I would have a maker mentality, that I'd have the background and the know-how and the want, the desire to actually do this kind of stuff. I'm not sure, but maybe I would. Maybe it is in my blood, but maybe it was instilled in me. And either or, it's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of work, and a lot of headaches a lot of times when you're building, or when you're fixing, or when you're trying to repair something that you don't know a lot about. But as with everything, it's just consistency and practice, and just doing your best to make and doing your best to make the best of every situation. Instead of going into a project where you have something that's broken and you want it fixed, maybe just look at things more of, hey, how is this broke? What is the main function, and how do I get there from just step 1 to step 2 to step 3, instead of like, how do I fix this whole thing right now? Because I think that's why people don't like the thought of fixing and repairing things, and they just look to replace, because it's so much easier to replace. But the gratifying satisfaction, just yes feeling, I don't know a good way to put it, but when I build things and I struggle, and I really struggle, I really don't ever dislike the whole process, because I know that I'm always trying, and I know that I'm always challenging myself, and I know that with a good challenge is going to come some frustration, but I know that if I just stick with it, it's a baseless confidence almost, because I don't have any plan a lot of the time. I just have an idea, and I have